Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Moments on Network. I'm Nyphen, and this is my mom, Dr. Patience Turtoe-Sanders.
Well, thank you very much, son. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, this is fun.
It is very fun.
Yes. It's a privilege to spend time with your family.
Always.
It's a privilege that we're spending time together because you know how busy the American life can be, and many people wish to have time with their parents, and many parents wish to have time with their children, but they cannot. So we give thanks to God for this special moment. It's a special moment. It's a teaching moment, a moment of learning wisdom. We learn from each other. We're never too old or too young to learn.
Absolutely true.
Yes. Well, today we are going to talk about our focus actually is wisdom, but for now we're talking about the relationship between African immigrants and African Americans. I am an African immigrant who has been in America for decades, and my son Nyphen was born to an African American father and was born in America. But he relates a lot. He relates well with African people, and I give thanks to God for that, because the majority of times African Americans do not want to associate with Africans. We talked about that and the last time for various reasons. One common reason is that they perceive the African um, continent as being poor, but that's not the right perception. Don't believe everything you see on TV. Try to understand the culture. Try to understand the African people because we are one.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We are one.
Yes. Anybody with a skin, dark skin, is from Africa. They might have been born in different nations, but your origin is Africa. And you need to know who you are. Because if you do not know who you are, you cannot really succeed in life.
That's
You need to find who you are, that thing that makes you tick. So that's what this show is going to be. But today we're going to talk about something. We're going to talk about something that is common between African immigrants and African Americans. And I'm going to pass it on to Nyphen to tell me one thing that he has seen that is common. Now, this program is unscripted.
Unscripted live.
It's live. It's not edited. I do not want it to be edited at all. I just want it to come out naturally. And we didn't plan what we were going to talk about.
Nope, not at all.
Because I want it to come out naturally. Now, what is it that you see from your own observation, son? That is common. Just one thing I think you should tell me that is common, and I'll run with it. Okay. What is it that is common that you have observed between the African immigrants and the African American people?
Well, one thing that I see is coming from my own perception is I think Africans and African Americans, they both like to be in crowds.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they both like to be in crowds, so that's one thing I see.
Well, that's a good observation. I thought you were going to talk about food because your dad is a chef and he loves to cook.
That too.
We'll talk about that another time. You brought about crowd because I do not want to spend too much time today.
Okay.
Yes. Now, yes, African Americans and African immigrants love to party. It's just in us to party. It's a natural thing. We like to celebrate. Africans like to celebrate every little thing. We celebrate birth. We celebrate death. We celebrate any achievement, no matter how small it is. And I have observed that African Americans like to do that too. And we do not celebrate alone. We love to call a lot of people to celebrate with us. What do you think about that? Do you think it's bad, good, or bad? Calling a lot of people to come and help you celebrate.
I think a celebration is always a good thing. I don't think it's bad to celebrate. I don't think a crowd is a bad thing. But when you allow a crowd to identify who you are and not being identified as an individual, then that's where the problem comes from. It's when you're allowing a crowd to identify who you are. You're your own individual, so you don't need a crowd to identify who you are or to persuade you to make bad choices or to feed in any gossip or hearsay, she say. I think that's the line. So a crowd isn't bad when you celebrate, but knowing who you are in the crowd and being your own individual, not following anybody else, is the most important element. To know you're not influenced by that crowd in any negative way.
Oh, that's wonderful, son. Oh my God, I'm proud of you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
not allowing a crowd to identify who you are, and this is where people make a mistake. They allow the crowd to identify who they are. If you do not know who you are, then you will allow others to influence you and to identify you.
That's true.
And this is the problem that I have observed both in the um, African American culture and the African immigrant culture, that people allow crowds to identify them. And without the crowd, they feel empty. And this is not limited to the African
No.
people. It's not limited to black people. It just cuts across, You have to know who you are to be able to isolate yourself from the crowd. You can be in a crowd, but you can as well isolate yourself from the crowd.
Absolutely.
This does not mean that you're going to take yourself out of the crowd, go and sit in a different corner.
Oh, no.
You are there, you participate, but you are not taking part in negative things that the crowd is doing. Because in a crowd, you meet all kinds of personalities. You meet all kinds of spirits. In a crowd,
yes, you do.
What I have observed in the African crowd is that people talk a lot.
Yeah.
We are an ostentatious people. We love to dress. We love to wear fancy clothes. And people talk when the clothes is, when what you're wearing is out of style. That causes gossip.
It does cause gossip.
When
Absolutely.
your earring is not in the right place, people begin to talk about it.
That's true.
When your shoe is not, it's just out of place a little bit. Maybe it's worn out, maybe it's old, maybe there's a little thing there that shouldn't be there, or maybe you didn't observe it. Somebody observes it. It becomes a topic of gossip.
It does, absolutely.
And you're not going there because of all that. But people size you up, especially in my own culture, in the Nigerian culture. People size you up. They look at you. They look at your wristwatch. They look at from the top of your head to the sole of your feet. People are costing what you're wearing. So, and that, again, is a subject of gossip.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely. So, sometimes you begin to wonder, this is a celebration. Why are people doing this? You go there to celebrate, but you come out ending up being depressed.
Yeah.
Being sad, people don't mind your business.
No, they don't.
Like, for instance, the first problem I had with my husband was when we went to an African party. That was before you were born. And, the American culture is such that women are respected. Husbands honor their wives, though not always. But it is the culture, it's an expectation of the culture. So men do things differently in the American culture than my own African culture, And being that we were in a very cold environment at that time, we still are, when it snows, my husband physically carries me to the car.
Oh.
And my African people didn't like that at all.
Oh, I'm sure
in a party, they said, "Why are you carrying her? Put her down. Please stop. Pat can walk," and stuff like that. But he says, "I don't want my wife to fall." But, people started talking about things like that. And he felt very uncomfortable with that. And he felt people don't mind the business. So, it's a good thing to participate in celebration. But it's a terrible thing to begin to be, to gossip, to turn the celebration into a thing of, gossip.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because in a crowd, you don't need the crowd to identify you.
No, and that's absolutely very true.
Yes. And this is not limited to the African culture, as I keep saying.
No, it's not.
It cuts across.
It cuts across.
Yes.
And I'm glad you said that, because I think it's a life lesson, because if you allow a crowd to identify who you are, then you're not a focused individual. You're seeking validation from other people.
Yes.
But once you know who you are as an individual, you don't need any other crowd to justify who you are.
No.
You can follow yourself. You can follow God.
Yes.
You don't need a crowd to justify who you are.
Exactly. When you have Jesus Christ, you see, when you make Jesus Christ the center of your life, then you begin to understand that being in a crowd it's not really the best thing to do.
Mm-mm.
When you take a look at the life of Jesus Christ, Jesus did not follow the crowd.
No, that's a good point.
The crowd followed Jesus Christ.
That's true.
And when you are focused in life, when you put first things first, I am telling you, you will make a mark, and you will begin to generate a crowd that will follow you.
Wow.
So don't look at as a mother to a son. Don't look at the things that people are doing. Look in your heart. Look at what's inside your heart. What does your heart tell you? That's what matters. Because when you are in sync with Jesus Christ, He's always there for you.
That's absolutely true.
He said, "Behold, I will never leave you nor forsake you.
Amen.
I am there with you 24 hours.
Amen.
It's not the crowd. The crowd will never be there for you.
No.
You know, the
never be
crowd
there for
is
you.
there
To have fun and
to
celebrate.
have fun, to celebrate. They cannot have fun without teasing somebody.
Right.
They cannot have fun without putting somebody as the center of, a distraction.
That's true.
You know, they need somebody that they will talk about.
That they'll talk about, and
when
it's
you are
going to be
not,
each other.
Yes, they talk about each other.
Yeah.
You know, so you don't want that in your life. You go, you celebrate. When people are talking about people, walk away.
Walk away.
Just stylishly walk away.
Walk away.
Don't be rude.
No.
But don't talk about people.
No. Don't talk about people. Because once you say something, people can say that it's a primary source.
It's a primary
so
source.
Once you say something, if somebody's talking, you say something about somebody can say so-and-so said this, and it becomes a primary source. But if you didn't say anything that they can't say, they can still lie, but that'll be their own conscience to deal with. But if you didn't say anything from your mouth to them, they can't go and say with a clean conscience that you said something.
Yes.
So always watch what you tell people.
Always. And once you say something, you can never take it back.
It's true.
You see, you know this the latest thing, the latest information, the latest gist in the American society is the Justice Kavanaugh.
Oh yeah.
That was appointed to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
You know what happened? He was in a crowd.
He was in a crowd.
If he wasn't in a crowd, he would have not been accused by somebody.
That's true.
As being, participating in sexual misconduct. I respect the professor, and what she says happened to her, I believe happened to her. But I do not think that it was the judge himself. They were there. He was in a crowd. There were three people. All the people she said were there. None of them could, corroborate her story.
That's none.
Something did happen to that woman. There's no doubt about it. But who did it?
Who did it?
He was in a crowd.
He was in a crowd.
That is the danger of being in a crowd.
Yeah.
When you are in a crowd, you are easily influenced.
That's true.
When you are in a crowd, people could tell stories about you. People could lie about you.
They can.
Because you are in the crowd. You are there.
Mm-hmm.
But when you conduct yourself, there's a way you conduct yourself. And when people say something, they will say, no, that's not this person's character. Like recently, I was at work, and a colleague of mine, the head of department, told somebody that one of the nurses said something about her. We were two nurses on the floor. So the head of department went to one of the nursing assistants to say, somebody said, one of the nurses said something about you. And the nursing assistant went straight to that nurse. And the nurse said, then the head of department said, why did you go to her? Did I call her name? He said, no, you didn't. But I know Patience will not do that.
You see it.
You see, your character tells the world who you are.
It does.
You can be in a crowd and still distinguish yourself. By your character. It's very important. Character matters.
Yeah, character does matter a lot.
Yes, it does matter.
It lets the world know who you are.
Yes.
And what you're capable of doing.
What you're capable of doing.
And what you're not capable of doing.
Don't be influenced by the crowd.
No, do not be influenced.
Not by any crowd at all. Not by African crowd, not by American crowd. Just Just be influenced by God's character.
Amen.
Be influenced by Jesus' character. Let Jesus be the center of your life.
Amen.
You know, this is a life lesson.
It is a life lesson.
You know, we learn every day. There are people who want to have this kind of discussion. Mother-son discussion, mother-daughter discussion, parents-children discussion. But they don't have such privilege. It's a privilege.
It's a huge privilege.
It's a huge privilege that is given by God.
It is.
They don't have it. So we're going to be here and be teaching the world, you know, how to live life in peace.
Amen.
You do not need the crowd to be at peace.
No, you don't need a crowd to be at peace. That's all you need is yourself and to believe in God.
That is it.
Once you are confident in yourself, and you don't need to follow a crowd to define who you are, then you're already a lot of steps ahead.
Yes.
So a lot of people don't even have that basic mindset to be
No, they don't. They can't because they think, oh, what will people say? I need to do this. I need to do that. You don't please anybody.
Yeah.
The only person you want to please is Jesus Christ.
That's right.
If it's not, when you even I as your mother, when you see me doing something that is unpleasant, call me to book. Mom, you know, what will Jesus do in this situation? I ask you all the time, what will Jesus do? When I see certain things, I ask you. I ask you, your sister. I say daughter. Maybe your daughter is going to be your firstborn. I don't know.
Who knows?
Like me, you know.
Yeah.
So that's just it. I ask your sister. That has been the thing that has really kept me going. What will Jesus do in this situation? Absolutely. And when I think of what Jesus will do, Jesus will love. Jesus will not hate. No, Jesus will not follow the crowd.
No, he won't.
No, he will not.
God doesn't follow the crowd, so you don't need to yourself.
No, you don't need to follow the crowd. You don't need to do things to please people. And that is where confusion comes. That is where confusion comes. Yes, in a crowd, people want to do things to please people. People want to do things to justify, you know, their action. When you know who you are, you don't need to justify anything.
Amen. You don't need to justify anything.
You don't even need to explain anything.
You don't need to explain anything.
Let people think what they think, what they want to think.
That's it.
It doesn't matter what you do. People are going to form an opinion about you anyway.
But you don't have to prove anything. You let God prove it for you. Life has a way of showing itself off, and that's what God does.
Yes.
He'll show you off at the right time.
Yes.
So you don't need to prove anything to anybody.
In actual fact, when you are not ready for fame and you get it, it causes depression. I'm telling you. Absolutely. I work in the medical field.
Yeah.
And I know, and I deal with all kinds of people, rich, poor, able, disabled, sick, physically sick, mentally ill. And I'm telling you, I have come to look at life in a different way.
Absolutely.
Because what everyone is struggling to have is peace, joy, happiness. And these things have been given to us free of charge through Jesus Christ, who dwells in us.
That's right.
He dwells in you.
Yes, he does.
Yes, he's there. Speak with him. Speak to him. He answers.
He does answer.
You don't need the crowd because the crowd will betray you when you need them.
Oh, yes. The crowd will betray
when everything is good for you, they go, yay. But when things begin to go wrong, who is the first to run away?
Oh, the crowd. The same crowd you thought were your friend are the same ones who turn against you.
Yes. My mother usually tells us, till this day she tells us, 2 is a relationship, friendship. 3 is a crowd.
Absolutely, that's true. 3 is a crowd.
3 is a crowd.
3 is a crowd.
Because 2 of the 3 will become closer than the third one.
It's true. That's
very true. And the 2 will find something to talk about the other person.
It's true. Absolutely.
And they will talk about the other person.
They will talk about the other person. It's true. It's very true.
Yes, they will, and you will not know until they fall apart.
Then they'll say that's what this person is saying about. So that's what happens.
So when you have a friend, one friend, that's my mother telling us now. And your friend now has another friend. Be careful.
Be careful.
The friendship is no longer the same.
It's no longer the same. Absolutely not.
Say nothing about the third person who has come to join you. Your friend, your best friend will test you. Once your best friend now has another friend, There is no best friend anymore.
There's no best friend anymore.
The friendship has been broken.
It's been broken.
So use your head.
Yeah.
Be wise.
Be wise.
Yes. Mind what you say about anybody on earth.
Absolutely. And another good point to realize is whenever there's a crowd and there's a falling out, your crowd will betray you because your enemies come from the people that you associate with.
Oh, yes.
So it's not going to be a stranger. It's going to be your crowd. So the same people you're close to are the same people, like you said, who betray you.
Yes.
And possibly become your enemies.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
You know, I like to go to places when they invite me, but when I do not feel like going, when I look at the crowd of people coming and I do not feel comfortable, I go nowhere.
Yeah, no, you don't have to.
Because I do not want to hear anything, and I do not want to be the source of gossip, and I do not want to be the subject of gossip. And, you know, people will come to you with information. And when you are in a crowd, you really have to be extremely disciplined not to be a part of what's going on.
You do have to be very disciplined.
And you don't want to do that because, I mean, you don't want to be a part of what's going on in that crowd. It's not always pleasant.
It's not.
It's not, because everybody wants to show up.
That's true.
Everybody wants to show off their intelligence, which most of the time is not there because, you know, it's not based on facts.
No, it's not.
What people say about people is not based on fact most of the time because, I mean, fact does not sell. What sells is gossip.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gossip sells a
lot.
Gossip sells.
Yes. Right,
Facts don't.
They don't.
And you don't want to belittle yourself to that extent of gossiping people. It's belittling.
It's belittling yourself,
yes, it's belittling. And some people, they take pleasure in belittling others to make them feel better or to make them feel good.
Yeah.
But that's a terrible way to live your life.
It's a terrible way to live your life.
Because you can't feel good putting other people down.
No, you can't.
When the chips are down, it's just you and your bed.
That's it.
You and your conscience.
That's it.
It's going to come biting you. I'm biting
That's
hard.
it. Absolutely. When you lay down at night, it's just you and yourself.
Yes, you and yourself.
Not your crowd. They're not laying in bed with you. It's
Mm-mm.
just you and yourself and your own conscience.
Yes, you and yourself and your conscience. So, you know, crowd is important. Crowd is good. But please, isolate yourself.
Yes.
Even in the midst of that crowd. And that's one thing that is really common between the African American culture and the African immigrant culture. We love the crowd.
Yes.
We love to follow. We love to be praised, and we love to be elevated, to be flattered. But flattery takes you nowhere.
Flattery takes you nowhere. You know what? It's nothing is wrong with celebrating. Nothing is wrong with celebrating. But knowing who you are and not following the crowd, not allowing the crowd to identify who you are, and being confident as an individual to know that you can stand on your own without the crowd being there.
Yes, that's what matters.
That's what matters the most.
But you know what? Not everybody can do that.
No.
Some people are afraid to be by themselves.
They're scared.
They're scared. But when you have Jesus Christ, you no longer be scared.
No, you won't.
Because, you know, come rain, shine, night, day, you are never alone.
You're not alone.
You can never be alone.
You can never be alone.
Yeah.
So we definitely hope you guys have appreciated our talk on not having a crowd. It's definitely great information to know because, as my mom said before, not everybody knows the simple concept of not following the crowd. So we definitely wanted to give you guys pointers on the crowd and how it's important to stand by yourself and be an individual.
Be focused.
Be focused. So we hope you've taken our words of wisdom.
Yes. A crowd is a distraction. Be focused.
Be focused.
This does not mean you don't go to parties. No, go to parties. Enjoy your life.
Enjoy life.
But be focused.
Be focused.
When you're focused, the crowd will come.
Absolutely. When you're focused, the crowd will come behind you. As we said before,
just like Jesus.
Yes, Jesus did not follow a crowd. A crowd followed him. So when you're focused, the crowd will follow you. And that's just how life goes.
That's just it. Just be happy.
Hey, let's be happy. So we definitely thank you guys for tuning in. As we said before, we'll be talking about key life topics on each episode of Mom and Son Network. So definitely keep on tuning in.
Yes.
And we hope to see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.